A record home defeat to South Africa. Wales in trouble before the World Cup. These are possible headlines that you will see over the next day or two regarding South Africa's emphatic 52-point victory against Wales is 16. The heaviest home defeat in Cardiff to South Africa. Is it all that bad? Or are there some positives to take away from this game? Well, let us dissect, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Give this video a thumbs up. I very much appreciate it. And if you've been here before, thank you for coming back. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you are enlightened by my opinion. I'm just kidding. Let me know your opinions. Let me know your takeaways on this game because there's a lot to discuss. I want to break down the game, and at the end, I'm also going to touch upon the possible 33-man World Cup squad that Warren Gatland could possibly choose based on getting some answers from today and also from the warm-up games in general. But before I do that, we had some other games today. I made some predictions, and I was fairly accurate. I did say South Africa was going to win today, but I was hoping Wales would come away with a win, but obviously that was not the case. Ireland beating England, and England possibly losing their only out-and-out number 8 for the World Cup squad in Vunipola, as he got a red card today, and that is going to hearing this week. France putting away Fiji. A very good performance from Fiji, albeit against a weakened French side. Although, is it really a weakened squad? Not really. They still had Jaminet in there. They still had Antonio. They had Rodrit. It wasn't a weakened French side really, but that just goes to show the depth that France have at their disposal going into the World Cup and in general. Obviously, they're a big playing nation in the top 14. They have lots of teams to pick from. Italy putting away Romania as predicted. It was a good game. Italy playing well, obviously, against Romania, not really a top-tier side, but still a nice performance from Italy going into the World Cup. And then finally, Georgia beating USA as predicted. So now let's go into Wales against South Africa. Was it really that bad? Did the scoreline truly reflect the game? Off the bat, I think if you look at the scoreline, you're going to say, yes, Wales were absolutely demolished at home to South Africa, the defending champs, with half of their squad still remaining from that 2019 World Cup win. But there's obviously the other side that this was an audition. This was not the first pick Welsh team. There was obviously some last minute changes, and they lost a lot of caps in those changes. Bigger came out, Cuthbert came out, Williams came out, all due to possible injury mitigation. They didn't want to, there was no full-on injury risk, but they just didn't want to possibly risk an injury going into the World Cup. Plus, it gave the opportunity to another couple of players who were making their test debuts. Kai Evans, for example, we'll get into that. And then letting Tom Rogers have another shot off where he was on the bench, and then he came back into the starting lineup. So, okay, before we move on, quick cup of tea, ladies and gentlemen. And I haven't had this in a long time. No, it's not a Stella. This is apple and blackcurrant squash. Can't really get that in America. So whenever I do get my hands on it, it's a luxury. Okay, so let's dive into some of the performances, some positives. We'll touch upon the negatives. I'll go through the lineup, and then I'm going to give my kind of individual report based on my own opinion, my own reflection on the game. I did rewatch the game. I was going to upload this video almost initially I was going to create a video and upload it almost initially, but I wanted to rewatch it. I also rewatched a couple of the other games as well today, just because I had a bit more time on my hands today. And yeah, I want to touch upon the positives, the negatives, if there's, what can we take away from this, and then dive into the individual players, and then touch upon my World Cup 33 squad that I think Warren Gatland is going to pick. So, obviously, we touched upon the scoreline. Did not reflect, I think, overall how the game was. Obviously, the way that South Africa were playing, no matter what happened on Wales' side of the field, South Africa was going to come away with that win today. They just had a different class about them. And again, inexperience, right? Continuity. They've been playing together for a long time. Half that squad overall has been in the 2019 World Cup, and they won it. So, before we touch upon positives, let's touch upon the negatives, because there's quite a few from today, at least on the whole. Mainly set piece, scrum time. Scrum time, a couple of scrum penalties initially puts you on the back foot. You can't get front ball going forward. Your set piece is kind of up in the air, and it kind of puts like a mental sort of barrier in your mind, especially as inexperienced front rowers that Wales had. Other than that, there was obviously inexperience across the park and lacking the continuity. But again, like I said, this is an audition. This was an audition for final World Cup spots. This was, okay, does this person go on the plane or does this person? Questions were asked, and after today's result, questions were answered. And that is the big thing here that we can take away from it. And I think Warren Gatland got what he needed to know. There was a couple players who he thought maybe could make it at the international level for Wales, but aren't quite there yet. Again, discipline, yellow cards, one very unfortunate incident before half-time. Dyer, look, I looked at it. I rewatched the whole game. I slowed it down as it happened. It hit Moody's hands first. And the way that you can tell is that the ball flight changed before Dyer hit it. And personally, I don't think it would have been a penalty try because, first and foremost, obviously, he hit it himself, so it was technically a knock-on. But he ran in front of the ball. He was no way going to be able to come back round unless the bounce of the ball changed things. We never know with the rugby ball bounce. The bounce of the ball can change in an instant. If you've played fly half long enough, you'll know what I'm referring to. So yeah, that was an unfortunate incident. And when you're playing a world-class team like South Africa and you go down to 14 players, they're gonna hurt. They're gonna hurt you, and they did. Almost immediately, they scored another try. So you're going into halftime. You were at 9 points to whatever it was, and then they score, and you go into halftime 24 points to 9. And you're up against it. You're chasing it. Then you're already down 14 players for the next 5 minutes of the second half, and your back's up against the wall, and you need to fight. And South Africa just said, no, we're going to pull away and go in a second gear. And I think the inexperience of that showed maybe in the Welsh squad. I've already said that. And then you've got to look at our accuracy overall. I think we made the right decisions kicking the points in the first half when we did. Sam Costello's accuracy was great, kicking with the ball. But yeah, accuracy. You look at the meters made and versus carries, for example, and the possession that we had. At the end of the game, we had 49% of the overall possession, South Africa with 51%. And again, that's why I say the scoreline does not reflect, because the meters made by South Africa, 150 of them were from the intercept, the 2 intercept tries. And again, that's just the accuracy, isn't it? The clinical finishing or the clinical passing, not looking in certain instances, and just unfortunate, very unfortunate. I think, again, possession, we were there. We made 500 meters over the gain line total, and then South Africa had 800. So they did more with the ball that they had. even though overall there was only 2% difference in possession. So positives, again, Jack Morgan, I think, played outstanding as a captain. I think we found our captain for the future. Positives, again, we had some questions answered. And I think that was possibly the biggest positive of the entire day, because this was a tough one. Warren Gatland and I think all of Wales needed to find out, do we have depth? And I think we have depth in some positions, but not across the park. Don't forget, we're a small playing nation. We have very few international worthy players compared to, the likes of France, England, even Ireland. Even though there's not too much of a difference, but obviously their setups are different, as well. So there were some positives. Again, we figured out what we need to do. We figured out who's worthy of making the squad, I think. The conditioning, I think we were fit right through the end. We played right to the end. We showed character in those moments, wanting to run it from deep a couple of times. And, it was a final audition to see some of the players, like I said, and the possession was there. We were just going back to a bit of the negatives. We just weren't accurate with the ball. We weren't accurate with what we were able to do with it. So lots to think about for Warren Gatland, and lots to think about for Wales and Welsh people and Welsh analysts who love the sport of rugby going forward. And again, this is just my opinion on it. Let me know your thoughts on it. Before I get into the squad itself and personal reviews and then touching on the World Cup, how good was Sia Khaleesi, by the way? Not only in his performance on the field for the first 40 minutes that he was on the field before they took him off, just to make sure that he was still good to go, but coming back from an ACL injury, surgery after 4 months, and playing decently, it's outstanding. The medical technology of today, ladies and gentlemen, and just the pure determination to get back to winning ways, incredible. And the way that he talked about Wales right at the end, that post-match interview was a class act, and the way that he had support for Wales and the team, what the team was going through recently, what the team's going through now, and by he said that going through a tough time in terms of losing very experienced players like Alan Wynne and Justin Tipp retiring before the World Cup, losing Ken Owens, for example, losing Rhys Webb as well, retiring from international. A couple other players pulling out of the World Cup squad altogether. Ken Owens, Corey Hill, for example. Just the way that he delivered that interview was class. He's a phenomenal advocate for the sport. Okay, moving on. If you didn't know, the Welsh squad from today was changed a bit, didn't it? Domachowski, D. Asarati, Ben Carter, Will Rowland, Stan Lydiate, Jack Morgan was captain, and Aaron Wainwright. In the backs, we had Kieran Hardy, Sam Costello, Rio Dyer, Johnny Williams, Mason Grady, Tom Rogers, and Kai Evans making his debut at fullback. He did play around and played fly half for a bit towards the end with Costello, again, a HRA, big tackle. Big hit on him, shall we say. And then replacements, Sam Parry, Nicky Smith, Henry Thomas, Teddy Williams, Tane Basham, Thomas Williams, Max Llewellyn, and Lewis Rees-Zammit. Okay, so let's start with the front row. Again, inexperience, but it was a learning curve. Earning their second caps against a South African front row, a South African pack that were in the World Cup final. They played well. They played well in the loose. Couple of scrum penalties obviously going against them. The front row's a mystery. It was back and forth. But again, a good experience for them, and I think they did enough, possibly as an audition here and in the first game, to put their hands up. D played well. The line-out was vastly improved. And obviously there was good communication across the park from the forwards. And he put his hand up and decided to step up and make sure the line-out went well. And it did. Ben Carter coming in. I said in the preview of this game that he was Welsh under 18s and under 20s captain. He was touted to be the next Alan Wynne, for example. But didn't necessarily do enough showing. Like, I watched that game twice, and he didn't really touch the ball until like the 25th minute, truly, where he had a little bit of a break and a little bit of yardage made. But we'll see. Will he get into the squad? I don't know. Time will tell. Will Rowlands, again, another physical specimen around the park. He's a good ball carrier for Wales. And again, he's earned that 25th cap going into the World Cup, which means that when he goes to Racing 92 in France, he'll be eligible for the Six Nations as well, which is great news. Dan Lydiard, again, just a big tackler around the ball. Played well. Did he do enough to cement a spot? We'll see. Jack Morgan, outstanding. Again, obviously a different sort of role needed today. He had to lead from the front. Lots of ball carries, lots of tackles, lots of jackals. He kicked the ball away when he needed to and found good touch over halfway. And he was in the right places at the right time. He made a couple good turnovers and just was, I think, a good leader on the field today. So is he possibly cemented his position as World Cup captain for Wales? And then Aaron Wainwright didn't have as good of a game as he did the first time around against England. But again, you're up against it when you're up against a massive South African pack. Slightly different game that he needed to do today. But I think overall, he'd be happy. Okay, moving into the backs. Kieran Hardy, did he have a game? Not quite. There was a couple of instances where he was slow to react to the ruck situation. Now, I get it. Fast ball requires fast breakdown, fast rucking, fast securing of the ball. And if you can't do that, then you as a scrum half are not going to be able to get in there. But there's a couple of times where the ball was just out and he wasn't getting in to get the ball out. He was waiting for more forwards to come in because, again, they were probably going to do the box kick. And there was lots of those today. And to be fair, they worked sometimes. I think the kick chase was a lot better this week. The box kicks were a lot more accurate. Sam Costello played well. He nailed his kicks at the beginning of the game. But he didn't have too much attacking platform. But again, you're going up against a very experienced South African 15. And he had some inexperience around him. So there was a lot for him to do. But I think he did enough. I think he put his hand up and I think he played well today. Dyer had a mixed bag. The yellow card, very unfortunate. When he got the ball, he looked good in space. A couple of defensive errors, but nowhere near as bad as his other winger. He did shoot up. He was playing in the 13 channel at one point when Willemse went over for the try. And he shot up in the outside center channel, but he was like not in line with his player at all. He shot up. I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to get the ball, but the pass was just too good. If he was more in line with his player and more square on, I think that possibly may have not been a try. At least there would have been a man and ball tackle that he would have had to make. But at least it looked like he would have made an effort. The way that try happened, it was a bit unfortunate, but an incredible pass, wasn't it, at the end of the day? Johnny Williams, I think he might be a little bit disappointed in his performance. He hasn't played for Wales in a long time, coming through injuries and whatnot. But I think overall we did enough to see what his capabilities was. He was very physical, made a couple of meters, broke a couple of tackles. And he's just a presence, isn't he? He's just a size, right? He's just a big boy in midfield that we need. And whether we go with George North, for example, or someone like him and Mason Grady as a centre partner, we'll see. But for the Scarlets, he's fantastic. So I'm not entirely sure where the disconnect was today. Maybe it was just, coming back from a little lengthy time off with injury and shaking off some rust maybe. But I think he'll be disappointed, but I think overall he may have done enough. Moving on to his partner, outside centre Mason Grady, I think he had a mixed bag as well. He showed some good pace to get back when that kick got put through. But then inexperience, he was in this 5, he had the ball, he had it in one hand, flung it away. I'm not entirely sure if that was an intentional fling or if it was purely just the momentum of the sheer quickness of the South African backline to get up on him and cause that pressure. Tom Rogers didn't have the best game, unfortunately, in my opinion. But obviously, look, he's going up against Cheslin Kolbe, who is out and out probably one of the best wingers in the world. Playing against Cheslin Kolbe, he's going to make people look silly, whether you're experienced or not. And there's a couple instances where defensively, Tom Rogers' first try, for example, he shot up, which meant that Marks could get on the outside. Another instance where it might have just been a little lapse of concentration where he was on the outside, for example, and he butt over too much and he wasn't in his 5 channel, and it allowed them to just get the pass out to Kolbe, and he broke up the wing. So yeah, that's just inexperience. You can probably get away with that at regional level, but when it comes to playing against South Africa, that's a learning curve, right? And hopefully he goes away and learns from it and becomes a better defensive player, just like Rio Dyer had to. Yeah, we'll see. And then Kai Evans played well. I thought, he was obviously expected to come off the bench, but ended up being in the squad. And he showed promise. There was a couple of errors. I think there was an instance where he was obviously had a little breakaway. Could have passed to the outside. Mason Grady was chasing behind him. You had Tom Rogers on the outside and Kieran Hardy on the inside. There was an instance where he probably could have passed, but he decided to cut back in, probably looking for some support, and just because he knew he was probably going to get tackled. Or he probably could have done a little chip over the top, ladies and gentlemen, chip over the top podcast. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Diolch, thank you very much. And maybe backed himself to win the chase, but he did have to slot in at 10 as well. At the end, didn't really do anything outstanding at 10, but he did slot the conversion from the touchline, which was pretty good. So mixed bag for Kai Evans as well, but making his international test debut. Tip my hat off to him, Yayan Evans' son, and he looked decent. Okay, moving on to the replacements. Sam Parry played well. Again, sorted out the line-out. Obviously scored the try at the end. Showed ambition and definitely put his hand up, I think, for Warren Gatland to take a look at him. Nicky Smith, Henry Thomas, when they came on, the ship got steadied a little bit in the scrum. But also, again, there was a couple instances where the scrum they were up against it, and there was a couple scrum penalties, I think, that went against Smith. One went against Henry Thomas, losing the bind maybe, or popping up. I couldn't remember exactly. So we'll see if they have done enough. Teddy Williams making his test debut. Unfortunately, he did get a yellow card as well for the first time for Wales. So we'll see. He looked good when he came on. He was a good ball carrier. But there's competition in that second row, home. So we'll see if he did enough on Monday. And then Tane Basham. Again, Tane Basham played very well. I would be ambitious to say that I think Tane Basham could start. Every time he's come off the bench, he's done very well. He's physical. He's got size. But he also has athleticism. And you need that from a number 6. We'll see. Thomas Williams, same old. He is Thomas Williams. Does the basics right when he needs to, and just adds a little bit of extra oomph when he comes on. Max Llewellyn came on, looked decent. But he wasn't on for long, so you have to kind of base your opinion on him on the previous game. So we'll see. And then obviously Zamet came on for 10 minutes. I'm not entirely sure why. Didn't really have to do much when he did come on. So there we have it. That was my rundown of Wales v South Africa. Now, like I said, the scoreline definitely didn't reflect. I think you take away the 2 interceptions, you take away the penalty try. That was probably more of a reflective scoreline. At least for me personally. I mean, just look at that. Wales 16, South Africa 31. You would have definitely been a lot more happier with that scoreline. But as it was, Wales 16, South Africa 52. Unbelievable. Okay, quick rundown of what I think the World Cup squad will be. Okay, so we've heard Warren Gatland talk about taking, a forward-back split, and with the presumption that he's taken 4 centres, 4 back 3, that's going to be 3 scrum halves and 3 fly halves. That equals 14. 33 minus 14, you are left with 19 forwards. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on this. And do you think it's possible that this is the squad? So there's a couple question marks because obviously we haven't seen a couple people play. We haven't seen Anscombe play. We haven't seen Cuthbert play. We definitely haven't seen Falatau play, at least in these World Cup warm-ups. So based on the presumption that you're going to need 3 front row players in each position, you are going to take Loosehead, Gareth Thomas, Domachowski. And here's the question mark. Do you take Nicky Smith or do you take, who did I have? Where is he at? I did have it pulled up. I do apologize here. Or do you take, who did I say? Kemsley Matthias? Yes. Okay, Gareth Thomas, Domachowski, I think, put his hand up. And then you're left with either Nicky Smith or Kemsley Matthias. Now, here's the thing. Nicky Smith is obviously a lot more experienced of the two. But do you go... Here's the thing. Let me know. Do you go into this World Cup with the presumption that we also need to build depth for not only the Six Nations, but for years to come? So with that being in mind, do you take Kemsley Matthias instead of Nicky Smith? Let me know. There's a couple more question marks. At tight head, I think your first choice is Francis. Your second choice is probably Dylan Lewis. And then, here's the toss-up. Do you go for the future and pick Azarati? Or do you go maybe with the more polished scrummager, but who's maybe at the tail end of his career, in Henry Thomas? Question mark. Hookers, if Dewi Lake is fit and injury-free, he's your starter. And then I think Sam Parry has done enough and put his hand up to also be on that team. And then you are left with either Elliot D or Ryan Elias. And that's a tough one because they're very, very similar players. So that's a question mark for me, but it's obviously between one of those two. At locks, probably going to take 4, maybe. But here's the thing. With a couple of hybrid players in Chunza and Plumtree, you could end up with 5 and 5, but also 6 and 6, if that makes sense. I think Will Rowlands is a surefire thing. I think if Dav Jenkins is injury-free, he's also a surefire thing. Now, here's where it gets interesting for me. Did Rhys Davis do enough? Did Ben Carter do anything? Is Adam Beard worthy of a spot? Possibly, just from an experience standpoint. But around the park, he's slightly lacking. Yes, he is a leader. I understand that. But again, do you want that or do you want to build for the future? If you want to build for the future, you go Will Rowlands, Dav Jenkins, Chunza and Rhys Davis. Do you not? Ben Carter, not quite there yet. I think Rhys Davis adds a little bit more physicality around the park. And then you have that good balance as well. Question mark. Back rowers, Jack Morgan is the first name in there for sure. I think Tane Basham is also in there for sure. I think he's good back row cover, but also a good 6 option. And then Wainwright, I think, is your next surefire thing. So that's 3. We have 3 more. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Is Falatau fit? If Falatau is fit, he's on that plane. No questions asked. Then, with the presumption that you take Chunza as a second row cover, but also knowing that he could be a back row option, do you go Plumtree or Dan Lydiate? And I say this because Plumtree can cover all the back row plus second row. Dan Lydia is primarily just a 6. Blindside flanker. Question marks. It's a toss-up, isn't it? Personally, I would build for the future here. But that's just me. But we do love Dan Lydia because he's an incredible tackler. And when you play Fiji up front, you need to take down them big boys. And with that chop tackle, there's no doubt that he's going to be able to do that. Moving into the backs. 3 scrum halves. There's only 3 in the Welsh squad, unless he decides to pull someone up. Gareth Davis, Kieran Hardy and Thomas Williams, they're in. Or are they? Who knows? Could he take 2 and then maybe go with a 4th fly half who could also play centre? Or be like a hybrid, such as Kai Evans. We'll get to that in a second. 3 fly halves, I think. Bigger is obviously your first choice. I think Sam Costello has done enough to be number 2. And then at number 3, okay, is Anscombe fit? If Anscombe's fit, is he on the plane? Because he can also cover fullback. If he's not fit, do you go Owen Williams, who can also play 10 and 12? And probably fly fullback. 4 centres, here we go. George North, I think, is number 1 choice. I think Mason Grady has done enough. I think he's done enough. I like Nick Tompkins, but I just don't know if he is what Gatland is looking for at 12. He does offer an extra edge about him on the field. He always acts like he's got, you know, point to prove, which I think he does. But again, he's a class player. He plays for Saracens, top flight rugby all the time. And we know what he's capable of. He's got the experience. Did Johnny Williams do enough today? And then, so that's 3. And then I think you're left with Max Llewellyn or Roberts. I think Roberts did a very good, showing against England last week. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm obviously going to do a full review once the squad is announced. But this is just my opinions. Let me know your thoughts. And then in the back 3, okay, obviously Zammit is a surefire thing, right? Dyer is probably a surefire thing. With Liam Williams being pulled out from today, he's definitely a surefire thing. So then you're 3, and then you have 1 left. But again, you can pick and choose if you go with 2 scrum halves maybe, and then add in the 4th fly half / hybrid player. You're kind of left with a Cuthbert, Kai Evans, Anscombe, we've already touched upon that, and Halfpenny. I think Halfpenny is probably on the plane purely based on long-range kicking ability and experience. But then you're looking at maybe pulling out a fly half option because you have Halfpenny who can kick as well. So there's lots to choose from. It depends on obviously the strategy that Gatland wants to go in with. And we'll see on Monday. So anyway, that's my full World Cup squad 33 player review and my take on Wales v South Africa. I understand this was a long video. I do apologise. I do ramble. Maybe I should have broken this up into 2 videos, but there we are. Again, if you're new here, hit that subscribe, give me a thumbs up, leave your comments below if you think that team is an accurate assumption, and let me know your thoughts on the game. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much. I'll catch you all very, very soon.